doing? Okay, now it seems to work. All right. Are we live? I think we're live. Let's play it. Let's go.
This is how it is today on Pop Culture Minefield.
Pop Culture Minefield presents Dangerous Military Nerds.
Today,
Dangerous Military Nerds. They're just like regular nerds, only dangerous. And now, your host, Gary Cassell.
this is how it is today on Pop Culture Minefield.
What is your major malfunction, numbnuts?
I got to meet him and get to know him before he passed away. I loved Arlie Ermy. And that's because of my working for Dale that I got the chance to meet that guy. Something else. But ladies and gentlemen, it's a new show of Dangerous Military Nerds. I know I don't do these things religiously, but I love doing these shows, especially when I get to talk about somebody like my guest today, Brian Boland, who has officially, over the last week, become the #1 author on Amazon. And I proudly did the artwork. So he writes the awesome book,
Right
and
there,
there it is. And by the way, that was a huge nod to my mentor, Drew Struzan, because I was doing my own emulation of the famous painting of Snake Plissken from Escape from New York that Drew Struzan did. And I used that as my guide to do the one of you. And I love that because the way you took that photo is just really cool, dude.
Digging
It's
it, yeah.
Cool. And here's the cover again. Let me just pop it up here. There it is.
Yeah,
Rampage. Deckplate Leadership Learned Under Sail by Brian Boland. And he's got his nogs on. And you were a pilot, right?
Yep. Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my first frustration because I was so excited doing that first book for you. And that's one of my favorite paintings I ever did.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
I painted 2 dolphins in it. And Julia came back to me and says, "Oh, they only had 1 dolphin there." And I'm like, "But we need something else there." And that's a beautiful painting of a dolphin.
Yeah. I never knew that. I'd never heard that story. Huh.
Yeah, and so she's like, yeah, you got to replace it because the other plane they had, was it a C-130? I think.
Yeah.
Was up there. So I painted a C-130 up in the sky, and that ship, and then the boat's on fire.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of action, and there's no movement, just action.
Yeah.
And I love that. The ocean, huge chopping waves. I don't get to do that kind of artwork very often. So when somebody pays me to do it, I get excited.
Yeah, I would too.
And I like the fact that both of us right now, are part of Warriors Inc. You're their author. They're your publisher. And eventually maybe you'll go do something else. But I like the fact that we have that kind of relationship. And I'm glad we finally got to meet.
Yeah, it's been. I mean, I think that first book was 2016, maybe. If I
that sounds about right. I was in Phoenix.
Yeah.
I know I was in Phoenix when I painted it, and I enjoyed doing that cover. The second one was a very simple painting, so I didn't do too much on that one. It was just a boat. But then this last one I really liked because you had that dynamic photo of you with your nogs on, and I was like, "Oh, that's fucking cool," Flying with nogs, what is that like?
It's it takes a little while to get used to it because and I flew my first 4 years flying C-130s. We didn't have night vision goggles, so we would be flying 1,000 feet over the ocean and it's just black in front of us, and so you were blissfully unaware of anything that was around you, and just by dumb luck, and hopefully you could navigate your way around, you could avoid anything that was going to bump into you. And then once you put goggles on from in the Coast Guard, most of what we're doing, search and rescue, and some of the counter drug stuff that we were talking about,
huge
you can
war on drugs with you guys.
Yeah, and that doesn't get a lot of attention, but having NVGs is a game changer, because if our guys on the radar or guys on the FLIR camera can see something, if there's even a lighter going down if somebody's lighting a cigarette, there's a chance we're going to see it. If they have a flashlight out just for a second to look at something, we're going to see that. So it makes from our perspective, makes the mission a whole lot easier.
Yeah, they're not smart enough to do what we learned in the military, to cut the ember.
Yeah, the lights. Yeah.
Oh, our dear friend Snortopupus Cuber is here. Is a great member of our audience and a friend, and so is Josh Coe. Free. I always do something on our shows, which is pay attention to our audience. We actually have a chat, and often they'll even have questions for the guests that I have on here. So don't be surprised if you get a question from these guys. This gentleman, how many years were you in total with the Coast Guard?
Total would be about 25.
That's a good career.
Yeah.
That is a good career.
Yeah.
You look at things like that and you realize, with the Coast Guard, it is people like don't quite understand how that works.
Mm-hmm.
And they are connected to the Navy in the United States Navy, but they've got their own command.
Yeah, they'll chop the Coast Guard can get kind of chopped over to the Navy if things get real bad. Yeah.
Where you Coast Guard boat pilots would be used for landing vehicles for the Marines in Taipan.
Yep.
And the rest of the Japans. It's a lot of those guys piloting those boats were Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, we have a Coast Guardman from World War II who received the Medal of Honor for putting himself and this boat in harm's way to protect the Marines that were trying to make their way up the beach. And he ended up being killed trying to save them. So how hairy did it get for you? Do you have some hairy moments?
Yeah. I mean, the way the Coast Guard, at least, my role in the Coast Guard as a pilot, that's what I did for most of my career. I was at air stations, which operate similar to what you would get at almost like a firefighter lifestyle. Like you tend to work 24 hours. So I was a paramedic
and it's very similar. Yeah.
And so the difference is like, we don't have our unit would not do the traditional workup, deployment, come home, recuperate, and then go back. Like there was not a cycle. It was just every time you went on duty. So you've got 24 hours. It could be quiet, and it could be that you get sent out 3 times, and sometimes you get sent out, you don't come back for 3 or 4 days. So it's just different than the rest of the DoD in that we're really good as a reactive organization.
Well, I think that's good though, because it allows guys to do because I told you one of my partners was Coast Guard, and he would do days with them, and then he would come and live with us at the station. Uh-huh. And so it was like he pretty much he had an apartment that he paid for, had nothing in there.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a what do you call it? An efficiency. It was just one room, and if he needed it, there was a bed there and a fridge with stuff, and he wouldn't stock it up much because he was usually either with us or he was on doing shit with the Coast Guard.
Yeah,
and he'd come back and he'd tell me some of the stuff that he did, and it wasn't like he had PTSD or anything, but I could tell some of the stuff bothered him because he was on water. He wasn't a pilot or anything working on a chopper. He worked on a boat. He said, we get this stuff, these guys, they're dangerous, and people don't know how dangerous these guys are, and they don't know what we're doing out here fighting these guys, trying to keep them away from America, catch them. He was involved in the capture of a sub off California.
Okay.
It was kind of cool. It was down off, it was really in Baja where it happened. So it wasn't quite in US, like American waters, but it was fucking cool. You guys are so awesome. And you don't get the credit you deserve. Nobody talks about what you do. Finally, a movie gets made and people start paying attention for a little bit. You know the one I'm talking about.
Yep.
With Kevin Costner, who's like one of my favorite actors to begin with, a big supporter of the military and those who serve this country. And so he made that film and had that fucking weird dude from
The Guardian.
He's really smart, but that was the only weakness in the show for me. But I love the movie. What did you think of it? You think it was realistic?
They did. I mean, for a movie, because anytime a movie comes out, it's going to get tweaked a little bit. as a coastie watching it, you could just look at the command center and, it had the dramatic, there's screens everywhere and they've got a live feed. And like the Coast Guard is so, it's just, the Coast Guard's just chaos. And all you can try to do is control it as best you can.
Controlled chaos.
The thing that with the Guardian, when they showed like command centers, I was like, I've never in my life seen a command center that has that many TVs that actually work, let alone a live feed of whatever's going on, out over the ocean. So there were little things you can kind of pick apart.
Yeah, they're doing it more like the Navy or the Army with the tactical operations.
Yeah. And an ops center at an air station is generally a really tired junior officer who's been in there for 24 hours. Who's just trying to get like one radio to work so that he can try to talk to the helicopter. And he's got, the most dramatic thing you get in a command center is like multiple phones ringing at the same time. Not the kind of thing from the Guardian where they're like, trying to make these like decisions about what they want the C-130 to do or the 60 to do. And everybody's kind of sitting in there watching it. It's not like there's a picture from with the Bin Laden raid and there was at the White House and like all the players are in there, the president and the Secretary of State, they're all in there watching this thing happen. That doesn't happen in the Coast Guard because we don't have that technology. So best you're going to get is maybe you might get an HF radio call through and that's on a good day.
Low tech, and I kind of like that.
Yeah.
If things get too high tech, then you kind of lose an edge. I always felt it's better to work with the simple shit and leave it to human instinct to do the job correctly. But here's the film, The Guardian. If you guys haven't seen it, we did a Kevin Costner film an hour before this show. I talked about the movie Open Range, which is absolutely on my top list. It's in my top 5 favorite Westerns. Has one of the best shootouts ever put in a movie. And but I do like this film because they show the heroism of what you guys do and the danger you put yourselves in. People don't understand. Flying a chopper in a storm is intensely insane because you've got so many air currents you're dealing with. And losing control of a helicopter, I've heard many a time that over the ocean is really scary shit. Not to mention electricity. So tell me a little bit of what that's like and how many missions do you think you've been on in your career?
Oh, I don't know.
And I'm talking rescue or whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I flew for a little over 15 years. And there's a certain, it's hard, hard to say like how many times I've gone out, but on any given month, you'd have probably 2 or 3 like legitimate SAR cases that you were going to get the pagers are going to go off. You're going to hustle out to the plane, fire up the engines, turn around and get going. The helo guys tend to get sent out a little bit more frequent than C-130s, which was what I was flying. But in any of the units I was at, it was not uncommon that the unit itself would have 300 plus SAR cases in a year. So you could, almost every day there's something going on where we're sending either a 60 or a C-130 out. And then on top of that, we would have planes routinely deployed so that we would send C-130s especially down into Central America to do the counter drug stuff. And so you'd usually rotate a crew down there and they'd fly for 2 weeks and then turn around and bring the plane back. And then the next day, another crew would turn around and go.
This is a mistake also that Americans make when they talk about the Coast Guard is they think that all they do is work around our coastline.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, they do insertion missions too. Usually oversight, flying over. And I love C-130s, by the way. Best sleep I ever got was on a C-130. I swear to God.
It'll rock you to sleep. Sometimes that's a bad thing.
Oh, man. Yeah. I'm sitting there and I'm just like, oh, my God. I'm trying to stay awake fighting it. And my buddy's laughing. And he says, you can sleep anywhere. What is it with you? And I could.
That's another military thing.
Oh, my God. I think the only one that freaked anybody out once was I took an M16. It was empty. I didn't have a magazine. I had no ammo. I put the butt of it between my boots. And I took my boots heel to heel like that and put my M16 between them, resting. And I put the muzzle of my M16 into the front of my helmet, and then I just dropped my head, and my chin
Kept your head
strap
up.
held me up. Yep, and I just bobbled like that, and I slept for 15 solid minutes. I got a good power nap, and they're like, "How do you do that?" And, like, we're so stressed out, and I'm like, "I'm calm all the time. I'm always relaxed because you don't ever want to lose your cool when shit's going on." Because when I went into the Army, I'd already worked in the medical field, and so I knew EMS and worked with fire rescue, river rescue, done all that shit. So I knew going into the military that this is what I wanted, and I wasn't going to let any of it stress me out. Drill sergeants in base, he didn't even freak me out. I ended up being friends with these guys because they're like, I was 26 going in. I wasn't a kid, you know? And I just loved everything about it. But the one thing you get with the military, specifically Marine Corps and Army in particular, is the hurry up and wait. Now, I don't know. Did you run into that with the Coast Guard? Because it seems like you guys are very specific in what you do. So you wouldn't be hit with that kind of bullshit.
In aviation, it was, there's anytime you send a crew out, there's a certain amount of time they can fly. You're either going to run out of gas or you're going to time out the crew. And an air crew can only fly for a certain number of hours before whenever they land, they're done. So
they have to rotate.
They have to rotate out. So it behooves whoever's trying to use us to not put us into a position where we're just kind of orbiting, waiting for something, some more guidance or something. So most of the time, once we actually got things spun up and we got the plane started and you truck down the runway and you take off, you had a plan. You kind of knew where you were going, and you weren't there wasn't a whole lot of hurry up, get there, and then wait, and we'll tell you more. Now, there were times we would orbit. Sometimes you get on scene with a boat and you don't know exactly what's going on the boat. And you're going to, I mean, we've orbited Go Fast, the drug boats, hours trying to, and the folks back in, in the command center, like we were talking about, they're trying to come up with like an interdiction plan or what they're going to do to try to catch the boat. And so there's a little bit of the kind of hurry up, get out there and now wait, but we're keeping eyes on them the whole time. So we're feeding information back. So it's not like we're just twiddling our thumbs and doing nothing.
Absolutely. And by the way, I'm getting ready to pull up. I'm trying to find you. There you are. I'm on Amazon now. And I want to show everybody this. Here we go. Present. I hate the way they put the StreamYard. Instead of like, add video, open video, it goes present. And I'm like, what a weird word to choose for showing a video. So I'm going to share my screen now. This is the Amazon account for Brian Boland. Great photo of him here. Look at him out there in the sun.
Yeah.
Oh, I clicked on the photo and usually it opens up, but it's not. Oh, well. Of course, here's the book. Right now, if you have Kindle, you can actually read his book for free. Look at that. That's beautiful artwork right there, my friend.
It came out.
That's a great photo. Is that a selfie or did somebody take that of you?
I think I had a camera on a timer or something. I don't know. I think it was. I think
it's
I
a
used
great
a
photo.
On that one.
What were you on in that? What were you flying?
That's the C-130. That's in the
C-130.
I think we were sitting in the cargo compartment on the back one night.
Absolutely. By the way,
yeah, because that's that little porthole in the back. There's a little window in the back. That's what you can kind of see over my right shoulder.
Yeah. So this is a great photo I painted this from. And if you have Kindle, you can actually read it for free. But right now, you can get the Kindle edition. If you don't have Kindle, for $6.99. You can also, because you don't own it when they let you do this. It's not your copy. You get to read it, but then when it's no longer available, it's no longer available. If you buy it, it's just $6.99. Hardcover. Support independent authors, man, and support independent publishers. This is published by Warriors Publishing Group, which is part of Warriors Inc. I've been with them, like I said, 18 years, man. I love working for them. And the hardcover is just $29.99. That's a good price for a hardcover. And I'm trying to remember, I haven't done the inner sleeve, so I think Julie is doing that one by herself.
Okay.
The hardcover. But she'll still use the artwork the way I designed the cover. And the paperback is $16.95. And you mind if I read this?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. In July of 1999, Brian Boland reported in with the class of 2003 at the United States Coast Guard Academy. Quickly immersed in an academically and physically demanding curriculum, Brian joined the sailing team, hoping to find relief from the day-to-day grind. With little experience on boats, he dove headfirst into the sport of racing sailboats, and with the dynamic environment of offshore sailing, Brian found that the two were at times at odds with each other. As he trades textbooks for tillers, Brian finds solace on the deck of an old boat named Rampage, where the open sea becomes his classroom, and he grapples with the high-stakes demand of maritime leadership while learning valuable lessons in seamanship and resilience. That's a good line. Did you write this?
Julia helped me quite a bit with that one.
I can sense Julia's writing on that because I love her writing.
Yep.
I invited her to join us, by the way, but she's probably busy. Let's see. Selected as the team captain in his senior year, Brian graduates with a deep respect for a nascent understanding of the sea. As a Coast Guard officer, Brian served for 20 years on active duty, primarily as a search and rescue pilot. From those experiences, he shares dramatic accounts of flying through the tropical storms, hurricanes, and across vast swathes of. I want to see more. Where's it at? Oh man, Amazon sucks.
Yes, well, I got it right here. Open ocean. Applying those.
Would
same
you like
lessons
to know more?
As a young
Would
cadet
you
on
like
the
to know
deck of
more?
Rampage.
I don't know if you've seen the movie. D.L. Dye was the military advisor on called Starship Troopers. And that's a running joke that every time something would happen, they would cut to a fake commercial and at the top of the screen. This is in the 90s, and they already saw ahead. If you want to learn more, click here. So this is a fantastic book. I got to read an excerpt from it. I never got to read the whole book, but I found it fascinating. And I like looking into the books before I do the artwork. It's a little rule of mine. I want to read at least a chapter. And I always tell, Julia, send me the chapter that you want me to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And that's what she does. And I said, that's where this painting came from too. This is, I love this painting, by the way.
So you nailed that one. That's when I saw that one, it was almost, that was kind of one of those ones where like you'd feel little hairs kind of stand up, because that's the picture I had in mind when I did that.
It's a great location. And talk about feeling isolated. This would be a place where you would feel isolation. This is available. It's called Signal on the Hill, a Cole Williams novel. This is the fictional character you created that I know is loosely based on you and maybe some of your friends.
I can neither neither confirm nor deny.
Because I write stuff too. I'm a writer.
Yeah,
I write graphic novels. That's what my preferred things are, screenplays. And I've got a screenplay that Shinatsky here on the panel is working with me on. He's actually taking over writing some of the script for me because I just don't have time. I'm working on so much stuff right now. And I really loved what I read in this one. I'm like, my God, this is cool. And I never thought I'd ever get to meet you. Never thought I'd ever get to meet you. But every single time I got to work in your book, she'd say, oh, we got another Brian Boland book. And I would go, oh, I'm interested. Yeah, send it my way. I want to do it. This was such a simple cover, the isolated boats moment. And,
but the isolation of it, the way that kind of the horizon just sort of blends with the water, that kind of drove home that one is that character, right? The protagonist. He's isolated in that one. So that it fit in nicely with that book. And
this one, of course, is the first painting I did for you. Caribbean's Keeper, a novel of vendetta, the Cole Williams story, book 1. Yep. And I'm telling you guys, get this book. Martin is going to share the link with you how to get this, so you can actually do that. Make sure to add it, or do you need me to add it to the top, Martin? Because you need to be logged in on my account to do that.
Yeah, I prefer that you send me the link.
Oh, you want me to? Okay. How about if I just send you this link to see all the books by Brian Boland?
Nice.
There you go.
And I've gotten to read at least one chapter from your books. And like I said, Julia always sends you the best stuff. And I can already tell, as I'm reading, I'm like, this is going to be a good book. Because you've got that natural flair for storytelling. I like the character Cole. And the artwork on this is a wraparound. Because like I said, originally I painted, because I can show you what I painted, the original painting.
So question, Brian, of all your books, do you have a personal favorite or favorites?
The first one, because that, and back to, we're talking about independent publishers. Maybe, the first one was when I'm trying, you don't know how to write a book until you've done it. And I wrote what I felt was something that might be able to get enough attention that I could, attract the interest of a publisher. And then, getting in touch with Julia and Warriors giving me a chance. We did a lot of editing back and forth. And so I got to learn kind of more about the process. And, and then to see that first one kind of come to fruition, probably my favorite, because I was learning the entire time what the process is, how you write the book, character arc, and all these things that Julia was telling me, like, here's where we really need to dial in this section, or we need to tune this, tweak this part a little bit. And that process to me as a writer is super fun, to have somebody take on your project and then help you kind of turn it into.
And they are very helpful.
Novel.
I'll tell you that. Because she gives you, I'm going to tell you, nobody gives better red line notes than Julia.
Yeah. No, when I got once they got on board, that was a game changer for me. And then that because of that experience, I enjoyed it so much. I had no qualms about trying to write a second one and then a third one. And then I wasn't sure what I was doing with the fourth book with Rampage that just came out, but I figured as my career was starting to wind down, I was like, man, I got a lot. I have a story. I want to put that in writing and see if I can turn that into something. And then, again, Julia steps up and says, yep, this is something we can work with. And I was like, oh, this is awesome that we can get this thing across the finish line.
Absolutely. And by the way, guys, please do go check out his books. I'm telling you, I would love to hear back from you. And I'm sure Brian would love to hear back from some of our regular. Yep. We have a lot of veterans in the group that love this stuff. And I do want to read some starred comments. Like we have John the Beagle Dad here has joined us. You need strong legs to be in the Navy and or Coast Guard. You really do. I have sea legs, but I discovered that when it gets really big in the movements, I get seasick.
Okay.
And so I wanted to be a Marine Corps. I wanted to be in the Marine Corps, and I wanted to be a hospital corpsman. And I found out that when I went to the recruiting station, the Marines don't have their own hospital corpsman. They use Navy.
Yeah, Navy guys. Yep.
And I went to the Navy to talk to him, and I don't know. I think you'll laugh when I tell you what happened. I'm sitting with this recruiter, and he's telling me, well, if you become a hospital corpsman in the Navy, you've got about a 20% chance of joining the Marine Corps.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, that's actually not a good percentage. So I said, what you're telling me is I've got an 80% chance of being just in the Navy.
On a ship, yeah.
And he goes, yeah. And I went, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I want to be a grunt. And so I said, thanks, man. I know if I go in the Army, it's 100% chance I could become a medic there. So in an infantry unit. So Thank you. And I walked out of there, and that guy was irritated with me because I just kind of blew off the Navy. And I'm like, I didn't mean to be that way, but I'm just like, I don't want to be in the Navy. I don't. I want to be in a fighting unit. I want to be on the ground. I want to be a grunt, is what we're referred to ourselves as. So, John is absolutely right. You need strong legs. Did you spend much time on boats, or did you just go pretty much from?
No, I did.
Sail.
You
sail.
Got
you
into
still
sailing. I have a boat. I have a little center console. I kind of take my daughter out to sandbars, and we go
little
tool around
16-footer.
It's about 19. Yeah, but it's big enough. We can go out in the Chesapeake Bay a little bit, and
because I had a 16-footer when I was a kid, and I loved it. I used to go. See, I'm from Virginia, and that's where I would sail, Chesapeake Bay.
Yeah.
In fact, I was on a catamaran, and we flipped on a sandbar in the Chesapeake. Oh my God. I was so glad I had unattached myself when it happened, because I would have got whipped and probably broke my back, because we hit that sandbar hard, and I went flying to it over it. And that was pretty much the end of it for me. I'm like, I think I'm done with water fun. I'm a land lover, and I do go out on boats for fishing, but past that, man. But I used to love to sail, man. I love the solitude of it.
Yeah, I loved being out on the water. And then when I graduated, I spent 2 years on a ship and then after that went to a staff thing for a little while. And I didn't get into flight school till I'd been in for about 3.5, 4 years by the time I actually went down the aviation path. So spent 2 years on a ship, and just that wasn't something I wanted to do for the next 18 years,
I got you on that one. John also said, not enough movies about the Coast Guard. I wholly agree. They're real heroes, these guys. They do stuff. And yes, I do believe, I think somebody mentions it, they're in Iraq, on around the waters of Iraq. You'll find Coast Guard involved. And these guys work directly with the Navy, and they are combat effective people when necessary. Let's see what's this next one. Got that one. Let's see. John said a lot, by the way, Brian. I think he's
yeah.
Hell no, they're patrol. Yeah, there it is, patrolling in Iraq. No, they are. I've actually read reports. The Coast Guard do get deployed.
Boats.
They're the best at it, man. Why would the Navy bother with it when they've got the Coast Guard that's experts at doing it? Of course, they're going to pull in and that's where the Navy pulls rank on the Coast Guard, is when they're needed elsewhere. It really is. That's how you guys ended up in World War II, being those guys piloting those boats on for landings. Like crazy shit, man. Yeah, he is on something, Chuckle. I don't know. What's that referring to? I don't know what that is. You ever go to air shows? Love going to the Houston and Orlando air shows. Me too. I actually, as a medic, when I was with an ambulance unit, it was what I finally went to after being with an infantry unit. I went to an ambulance unit out in California, and we would do site support for those shows. And I love that, man. Because I'm on the job, but I'm watching. I get to watch all this shit go on. Crazy shit. You guys ever get to do that with?
It's funny. I in 15, 16 years of flying, I only got to do one, and it was like 2 months before I retired. And we took a C-130 down to Sun and Fun in Florida, which is a big flying air show. And so that was that, and that was, I guess that would have been sometime in the spring, this past spring. And I thought for sure that we would get, because a lot of times what happens in the Coast Guard, they tell you're going to do one thing, and then something, there's a hurricane or there's flooding or there's a storm or boats in trouble. And you go in thinking you're doing one thing, and you kind of get told last minute, hey, you're pivoting and doing something else. And the whole time, even the morning of, I was like, there's no way we're going to go hang out at an air show for 3 days. Like this stuff never happens. And then sure enough, we, fly down to Lakeland.
It actually happened.
Hang out for 2 days. We're sitting on the top of the plane, kind of watching the Thunderbirds do their demo flight. And like, this is a pretty cool way to finish out a career.
Hell yeah. I mean, that's fucking awesome. Now, I am curious. This is just me being curious. With the Coast Guard, because you guys do serve around the West Coast.
Yeah. Do
you ever get involved with any of the fire that they get with inland?
No.
I'm surprised at that, because it seems like you would be a great asset.
Our C-130s, we don't, in the Coast Guard, we're not equipped to do like the dispersant, like to actually fight a fire. And it's interesting because some of our old C-130s are actually now with Cal Fire out in California. So there are some of our,
they could have easily have equipped it.
And they're being retrofitted.
I think that's something that they should be considering.
There's some ex-Coast Guard workers that are flying.
You guys got some great stuff. Not to mention, for rescue as well. I just think that not utilizing the Coast Guard for California, Oregon in particular, with their fires, that you guys don't get utilized. And
Yeah.
I'm surprised
and
nobody
then
has
the other
done
one with that is that the Air National Guard or it might be Air Force Reserve. I'm not super savvy on it, but
It's
they have
probably
some
both.
units that do firefighting.
Yeah, I know that the National Guard does. I was with a reserve unit out in California, and even we got pulled in during some of the fires. And I was there just for site support as a medic, and watching those firefighters, man. My God, those guys got guts. I tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you too that I think Coast Guard has some of the gutsiest guys, because you guys are going into storms that people are trying to get the fuck away from.
Sometimes, yeah. Yep.
It's like, and I think they depicted that pretty well in that movie with Costner. There are lift problems. People don't understand it with helicopters. They rely completely on lift. They don't have wings. They can't glide. That is a rock with a propeller. And if you lose lift, or if you get, because I can't remember what it's called. There's a term for it. It's in my book that I did with Dale Dye, Code Word Geronimo, showing how the helicopter crashed when they took out bin Laden, and explaining that they lost lift. And it's called, I can't remember, it's rotate, something rotation.
Is it vortex ring state?
There it is. Thank you.
I don't even fly helicopters, so that's all I got. That's the only intelligence.
And I'm so surprised that. So did you like flying the C-130? Because I think it's one of the greatest planes ever made.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. It's the thing is, it's when it taxis past you, like you feel the ramp shake. It's like. And the whole plane, it just, when you start up the engines, the plane just sort of starts bucking, and you're sitting there in the chocks or the parking brakes on, and the thing just wants to get going. So I always thought, like, this thing feels like you're sitting on top of a bull, and you just got to get it to the runway and let the thing go. And I loved, it was what I wanted to fly. A lot of guys when they're young, especially, they want to fly helicopters because those are the guys that are going to go, hover in a blizzard in the North Atlantic, pulling people off a fishing boat. But I knew that C-130s had some range. I knew that they were outside of the U.S. quite a bit, doing a bunch of different missions. They got on the road. I knew they had a reputation for having a really tight crew once you got up and flying, and those were all kind of things I wanted to be a part of. So I was super happy to fly them. It's a small chunk of the Coast Guard. The majority of pilots in the Coast Guard are flying helicopters, but we do have some fixed wing stuff going on too. And I was super happy to be a part of the C-130 community.
Yeah, and that's what you were a fixed wing, and I, for some reason, initially thought from the descriptions that you also flew Dolphins, because that was so important to have that Dolphin in there. So I put two.
Oh yeah, no. So that was So with the first book, that was because it was the unit is Patron is a helicopter interdiction squadron that the Coast Guard has, and they're a unique unit in that their sole purpose in life is to go shoot engines off the back of drug boats and low profile vessels and whatever else the drug cartels can come up with to move drugs.
And they're sneaky sons of bitches, because they are really adventured into fucking submarines, man.
Yeah.
They're making these homemade submarines.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, the Coast Guard, that's who's dealing with all this shit. And it would be so much worse in this country if not for the Coast Guard.
Yeah, so I've always, and the interesting thing to me, having done that mission for as long as I did, was seeing just how, as soon as we got good at figuring out what they were doing and finding them, that overnight they would change their tactics. They would go from a go fast, just a speedboat, to a fishing boat, and then we'd get good at finding fishing boats. And then they'd go to the semi-submersible subs that you're talking about, and then we got good at finding those. And then they went to LPVs, which is similar to the sub, but it's like a speedboat, but it sits just about underwater. And I don't know how they did it, but they're bad people, but they're smart people, and their business model, they can make a few phone calls and change everything they're doing seemingly overnight. And then we're left, we go out the next day and we're like, well, they're doing something different. And then we have to catch up and figure out, all right, they've changed their tactics. They've
Yeah,
changed
because
the
you guys
vessels
have
they're
to
using.
be all the time. I mean, do you now? I am curious. Does the Coast Guard have its own intelligence, or do you guys rely on Central Intelligence and FBI?
So doing the counter drug stuff, there's a task force that's part of Southern Command. So it's Joint Interagency Task Force South, and they kind of run the counter drug mission for everything coming out of Central America and going north, or South America through Central America and coming up north. And so that's who we're working for. And they have their, I was just the guy driving a C-130. So I didn't really have insight into what they were doing with their intelligence. But there is an intelligence program inside of the Coast Guard. And then that's, layered into a probably bigger intelligence program that those folks at the task force were able to kind of tap into to figure out, where they wanted us to go on any given day.
Yeah. Now I was it was one of our audience chat members that said that the Coast Guard, because I brought you up a few weeks back, and I think it was even before you and I talked. I brought up what you do, and I was proud of this cover I did, and somebody said something that well, the Coast Guard is more like law enforcement, and so you wouldn't refer to, because I said firefight, and they said it would be more like a police action than a firefight. And I'm like, I don't know if that's true, because you guys still are part of the Department of Defense. You're not part of law enforcement. You're not with.
Well, the Coast Guard falls under Department of Homeland Security, and then has some other missions that would fall sort of under Department of Defense, like you're talking about, patrol boats.
Which is why they pull them. Yeah, they pull them and send them places they're needed to patrol. And and you guys are just. I'm serious. I cannot give more compliments to the Coast Guard that you guys do some of the best patrolling out in those waters. You really do. And it's such an asset for the Navy to have you, because they're at the broader picture, whereas the Coast Guard is at the more microscopic looking at things.
Yeah.
And the details.
Well, we're not, I mean, the way we differ is that we're not the Coast Guard, the majority of the Coast, we're not war fighters. So, the Navy, Marines, Air Force, Army, you're a war fighter. And then the Coast Guard is sort of this, we're somewhere in the middle. So when you talk about the firefighter thing, from a search and rescue perspective, which is the bulk of what I was involved in, you're very much a firefighter, because a call comes in, someone's in trouble, you go out and you try to help them. But the police side, there's a law enforcement aspect, because half of what we do is law enforcement based. So we may be going out looking for illegal fishing. We may be going out looking at people that are smuggling drugs or people that are smuggling migrants. And then that's a law enforcement, mission that you go out on. And then not uncommon for us to go out on what we think is law enforcement, and then it turns into a search and rescue case. Or you go out on a search and rescue case, come to find out the boat's stolen, and now it turns into a law enforcement. So, and it's back to what we were talking about earlier.
So you're back and forth. Yeah,
you don't
I
know.
get it.
You have no idea what you're going to end up doing that day.
The shocking one is one report I saw where they went onto this boat where everything seemed so normal, and everybody was like being compliant, and the next thing you know, it's a fight on this yacht, and I'm like, holy shit, you guys, what you deal with is just mind-boggling to me. And I know you're in the air, but you're still part of what I'm talking about. And by the way, my uncle Bud was a pilot of B-17s, and my cousin, my cousin Bud was B-17. My uncle was a PBY, and he ended up going into the Coast Guard when he got out of the Navy, and it was one of his favorite things to do. And so I had at least one member of my family in the Coast Guard.
Yeah, the PBYs are amazing. They're awesome,
because they were used for different things. Because sometimes they were there to rescue, and sometimes they were there to look for subs, and sometimes they were to drop shit on those subs or boats that they would spot. And it's just fascinating. I don't know what to refer to it as, but the growth and changes within the Coast Guard. And did you see much of that? Because the drug war has changed so drastically over the last 35 years.
So it's interesting. When I first went to the academy, the Coast Guard was under the Department of Transportation. And then while I was there as a cadet, 9/11 happens. And then when I graduated in 2003, that was when we we were the first class that graduated under the at the
Homeland
time it was
Security.
new, but Homeland Security. So I kind of saw that not from an operational side, but you know, the shift from transportation to Homeland Security, that was where we started to see a little bit more of we were sort of stretching our scope out in terms of law enforcement. So it went more from a reactive or defensive thing to, okay, now we need to be looking ahead to see where these threats may be coming from. And then the Coast Guard has stood up. There's new capabilities that came along with that, but then there were also some new units that we stood up, and now that Homeland Security mentality, that kind of factors into everything that we do, which was a kind of a paradigm shift just as I was coming out of the academy and kind of starting my career.
What made you want to become an author? Because this is one I really want to get.
Yeah.
Was this something that started early? Have you always been a writer?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've always done writing, and I when I was a teenager, there was like a teenager. There was a program for teenagers when I was in high school to work with the local newspaper, and I got involved in that. So I've always been into writing. But when I was in my maybe late 20s, I was finishing up a master's degree, and I was getting kind of frustrated or just bored with academic writing. And so one day I mixed up a rum and Coke, and I was like, I could have so much more fun writing something that I create, you know? And so I wrote, Caribbean's Keeper, the first book, I wrote basically the first chapter in a day or two, and then just kind of saved it on my computer. And then I was like, I got to get back to, you know, write my thesis or whatever. But I had that, and I was like, I think I could write a book. I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to give it a try. So as soon as I was finished with a master's degree, I was like, all right, I want to pivot now, and I want to see if I can incorporate all the things I've seen and done in Central America. Can I create this character and then tell that story through his eyes, you know, rather than my own? Because I think that would be a more interesting storyline than just me sitting in a C-130 looking at it all. But you know, if you see, like, I think every one of those novels I've incorporated C-130s into it somehow.
Yep.
So it's all the characters. They're all. You know,
I like, by the way, painting vehicles.
Which one is it?
I'm hoping they let me paint another vehicle. I like painting vehicles.
Okay.
I really do. And so I'm hoping that the next time you have a book, that they'll let me paint another vehicle, because I like painting airplanes, helicopters. They're just fun. It's funny because I don't know if you know who Graham Nolan is. He's a well-known comic book artist, did Batman, all that shit. He co-created Bane, the guy that broke Batman's back. And we had a conversation one day, and we were talking about the things we don't like to draw. And he's like, I hate drawing Huey helicopters. Fucking hate them. Any helicopter. Can't stand drawing them. And he says, what do you hate? And I said, horses. And he goes, why? And I said, and his was because he worked on Predator, the comic book. I don't like doing, because I did a graphic novel of the Battle of Hastings in 1066. And it's a 124-page graphic novel of what really happened. It's a very historically accurate book. And I drew 88 pages of fucking horses.
Yeah. Oh.
And apparently I'm good at it. Everyone's like, man, now fucking horses are awesome. I'm like, I hate drawing those things, because they only have two expressions: calm and bat shit out of their fucking minds. That's the only expression horses have. And it's like, who wants to draw that? You have these great concepts that I like, and I love the character you've created. And do you see yourself doing more books on Cole?
No, I don't think so. So that was, you know,
you've wrapped up that story.
Yeah. So I mean, never say never, but he's kind of this, you know, I read a lot of Tom Clancy when I was a kid. So the idea of Jack Ryan is just this Boy Scout, perfect.
That's going to be my next question: is what inspired you?
Yeah, and it's like, and so for me, my experience was that nobody, like, the idea of this Jack Ryan, I don't like that, because everybody I've interacted with that's left an impression on me there's good and bad, and you make mistakes, you make good decisions, and you may have a a good heart, but every now and then you're going to screw something up. And so one of the important things to me was that this Cole Williams character, he screws up. He does dumb things. He's irrational sometimes. He gets himself in trouble. He's smart enough to know that he shouldn't do what he's about to do, but he's going to do it anyways, just because he wants to blow off some steam. And yeah, there's definitely, where that character and I diverge is he gets kicked out of the Coast Guard. I didn't get kicked out of the Coast Guard. So kind of everything after that is, okay, now I have this character and I'm free to do whatever I want with him because I've detached him from any of my experience. But in Caribbean's Keeper, most of what I describe, his experience when he's on the boat and he gets kicked off the boat and then thrown out of the Coast Guard, I drew a lot of that off of my experience on the boat because I just didn't enjoy being on a 270-foot cutter with just the community and the mentality and the workload and the general sense of frustration on that boat is where I started to create that character because I wanted to be able to capture everything that I felt on the boat and then break away and then do whatever else I wanted to with the character after that.
So you've pretty much gone full circle with him. So what are your plans for the next book? What are you planning on writing, or are you going to take a hiatus?
No, I'm really obviously I'm a pilot, so I'm really interested in flying, and I've delved into military aviation with the book Rampage, but as my commercial aviation is a whole nother world, and I mean, if I could come up with, this couple months ago when I was still on active duty, we were flying off the north coast of Haiti, and there were these, like a DC-3, radial twin engine radial plane. I mean, they're dating back to the 40s. They're still flying down in Central America. They're still using these old radial engine, World War II surplus airplanes, and I could see them. We were watching them on our FLIR camera going into Haiti. I don't know what they were doing, but they're doing
something.
They're doing
that
something.
Sounds hinky.
And so seeing those things, I'm like, there's more to aviation than, my experience is very limited in the world of aviation. I've flown C-130s for 16 years. There's so much more out there, and there's so many different other stories to tell that I could see myself doing something else with aviation. But I also play, I play guitar and I sing a little bit. So I've done a little bit of recording. And so with the books, I've usually done like focus on the book gets published, work on music, kind of delve into that for a little while, and then go back to writing a book. So I kind of do one after the other. So I don't know just yet. I usually, once a book comes out and I kind of can hold it in my hand, I'm like, hey, here it is. I'll probably throttle back for a little while before I commit fully to doing something else.
So what other areas would you be interested in particular going into? Like the smuggler / gun runnings, more like Top Gun style stuff?
No, I'm really interested in commercial aviation, like just because the way the aviation industry works as a pilot, you tend to really have to slug it out when you're young. You have to pay for all your training. When you get your first job, you're usually making barely enough money to get by. And it's this fight and because pilots love flying, they're willing to do it. But there's so many stories of guys who are going, into their 20s and 30s. And sometimes they're sleeping on a cot in a hangar, flying a banner tower off the beach because they're just trying to build enough hours to get to the next job. And it's a really weird industry, and it attracts a type of person that story is pretty, to me, is pretty remarkable. And so that's one that I mean, I don't even know enough to speak intelligently about it now, but so back to the DC-3, like I want to know who flies a DC-3 in 2024 into Haiti. There's, basically lawless country. How did you get to that point? Because we were flying, one of them flew right underneath us, and I keyed up the radio and I was like, hey, that's a gorgeous plane. And as we went over the top of them, this guy keys up from this DC-3. He's like, hey, same to you guys. And like that guy's story, like I want to know how he got to that point in life that he's about to go land a DC-3 in the outskirts of Port-au-Prince, because that to me is pretty interesting.
It almost sounds like it possibly even spooks, you know. That was something like I went down to Honduras. We had to my unit back in Virginia. I was at Fort Belvoir, and we got sent down to protect a road crew down there that was constructing a road in Honduras. And this is still when they had a problem with Contras, you know, right pretty much at the tail end of them. And the spook just came walking out of the fucking jungle. I shit you not. We had just pulled all of our vehicles to the side of the road. We were going to do a little bivouac for the night. And I had to instruct everybody, don't lean against trees, lean against each other, because the saps off of some of these trees will fucking kill you. So just don't touch anything indigenous. Honduras is a nasty place. Looks gorgeous, but it's nasty. And we're getting ready to start cooking chow. We had the crew that brings over and actually makes hot meals. They'd come up to meet us. So half of us are eating MREs and half of us got a little bit of hot chow. And this fucking guy comes walking out with an indigenous person out of the jungle. Just walks up, identifies himself by name, but nothing else. This is, I was wondering if I could just have some chow with you guys. And my sergeant's like, well, fuck yeah, join us. So he sat down and I'm like, who is this guy? And he looked at me and goes, don't worry about it. He's a spook. Like, what the fuck is a spook? I didn't know what the hell that was, you know, and had to have him explain to me. He's probably CIA or something like that. And that's his guide. And he's looking for something or someone. And I'm like, holy shit. And he did. He played cards with us and then went right back into the jungle after it was all done. And I'm like, that's the weirdest experience I ever had in my life. Military or not. But, you know, you guys, like, I'm sure at some point, did you ever have to transport people for stuff like that? We won't identify anything, but I'm just curious if you ever had to do that.
No, not. They weren't really using the Coast Guard. When we were moving people, it was generally our own folks. Sometimes we'd pick up some prisoners, but those were pretty easy transports. We'd go into whatever country, pick them up, and they had, they were agents. So when we were carrying federal guys, they were usually, it was law enforcement. So FBI, DEA, ICE, somebody.
Right. With that, you've got other missions you've had to work on. Were there any that were outside what you would call the norm that you could talk about?
An unusual one. I mean, it's not a super spicy thing, but we did a lot. The unit I was at in North Carolina, we would fly up to northeastern Canada, up to Newfoundland.
Right.
And we spent a lot of time mapping icebergs coming out of in between Greenland and Canada, and as they kind of shoot out into the Atlantic. And so there's this whole this international ice patrol, and it's multinational effort that's been going on basically ever since the Titanic to keep tabs on all the icebergs. And nowadays, there's satellites and ships have radar, and it's not the same.
I never thought about that. That would definitely fall under Coast Guard.
But so we've done that mission for decades, and guys have flown all sorts of airplanes up there, and there was a time when we would have ships up there, just all from basically early spring all the way through the summer, and we're trying to figure out where the southern limit is of all these icebergs, and then broadcasting that information.
Are you using passive radar, or what are you using to map?
Yeah, using radar and then cameras. So a lot of times our FLIR camera will go take a look and get imagery, and the whole idea is that you can tell all the entire the global shipping community, hey, if you're going from North America to Europe or Europe back to North America, here's where the southern limit of the iceberg flow is. If you stay south of that, you don't have to worry about being Titanic Part 2. But it was a really cool mission, because how many people would pay money to go sightseeing in a C-130 looking at icebergs. We'll drop down to 200 feet and we're cutting circles around an iceberg that, possibly no one else in the world has ever seen this thing. So pretty unique mission.
What kind of things do you end up doing on these rescue missions with the C-130?
So you kind of talked a little bit about our helicopters, and our 60s, the H-60s can get to about 300 miles offshore. That's kind of their max range. Anything beyond that is sort of exclusively for C-130s, because we're the only aircraft that can get that far out. So in the back of the plane, we'd carry life rafts, dewatering pumps, survival cans, and several. We had a couple different types of parachutes. So if we found a boat that was outside of the range of a helicopter, we could, if there's people in the water, we can drop them a life raft. If there's a boat that's sinking, we can drop them pumps. And yeah, sometimes you get on scene with a boat, and it's staggering. You can kind of look at it and be like, man, I don't think that I'll see that much money in my entire life. But when we don't discriminate. When you're having a bad day and you're out in the ocean, like we don't care if it's a John boat or a mega yacht. Like if you fall in the water, we're gonna drop you a life raft.
Treat you just the same. Amen. We got some more comments up here that I need to get to. Gap After Dark, dear friend of this show, great member of our chat. A credit freeze can stay forever. Oh, what's he talking about? Every American Social Security number may have been stolen in the new major hack. I haven't heard anything about that. That's like, I guess that's big news right now. Then he comments, Amazon Rampage, Deckplate, leadership learned under, and then he gave the link. I hope everybody checks this book out. I really do. This is a worthwhile series of books, not just one book. I love all your books. And I am so fucking proud that I got to do the covers to every single one of your books. And whatever you write next, I'm looking forward to it. But please do me a favor. Hint that you want another C-130 on the cover.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Absolutely. Because I fucking love the C-130, man. It's my favorite plane. I was in a lot of helicopters, just transport. I wasn't airborne or anything. And I just love those helicopters. And when you mentioned the H-60, I wasn't too sure about those things when I saw them, because I knew Hueys and I trusted Hueys. But I'm like, Blackhawk was still pretty new when I was in. I was like, what is this thing? I got in that thing and I'm like, this is the most comfortable ride I've ever had in a helicopter. It's like you feel everything in a Huey. You feel the engine, the props, you feel everything. And it's not like that with the Blackhawk. And I thought that was really weird. But C-130 is still my favorite plane, always will be. Army loves them. Hell, we got songs about them in the Army. You ever heard those?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Opening line to one of the Airborne Rangers songs, C-130 rolling down the strip, Airborne Daddy on a one-way trip. Love that shit. Do you do any drops with people?
We did, kind of for just kind of build our own proficiency. And there was a time that we were playing around with some of the Air Force PJs. So we had this great idea, I guess. That,
they're great guys, by the way.
Yeah, they're pros. They're total studs. And
the only guys in the Air Force I like are fucking PJs.
Yeah.
Man.
And I'll tell you what, we ran into some of the combat air controllers down in Port-au-Prince. They kind of took over the airport after the earthquake down there. I think that was like 2010, and those guys were absolute pros too. But the PJs were willing to jump out of our C-130s. So the idea was, if there's, and they've done it. It's a mission that PJs will do out of their own hercs too. But we kind of partnered up with them for a little while. That if 1,000 miles offshore, there's a boat and somebody has a medical emergency or needs like a higher level of care, the PJs were like, yeah, we'll absolutely jump in. So we would drop their Zodiacs out the back with parachutes, and then the PJs would jump behind it. And I never did that. We never did an actual SAR case with it, but got to train with them a little bit and so we were dropping their gear out the back and then having those guys jump, which was pretty cool.
Have you ever piloted any other plane? Because like you brought up the DC-3. Everybody knows also, if you know military, that's also the C-47. It's the same plane.
Yeah.
DC-3 is the commercial version.
In flight school, I flew a little single engine plane. It was a T-34 and then a King Air 90. And then I got a little bit of time when I got out. I left active duty for a little while, so I got to fly 747s, flying cargo for about a year. So I got a little bit of jet time.
47, holy crap!
Yeah,
that's a big plane.
Yep.
Good God. What's the larger one, the bigger one that's got jets on it, and the Army uses it in Air Force?
The C5.
It's 47 or C5?
There's a C-17, which is bigger than a Herc.
C-17, that's the one. That's
okay.
it. The C-17. I've never been on one of those, but that's a big sucker right there.
They're big. They're big airplanes.
But Snorta Poopa says, I bet the cartels use some DC-3s. It's a good plane for some.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you something with the DC-3. I read in some of the tech info on it that it could lose up to 70% of its wings and still fucking fly. Unbelievable. That plane is hard to knock out of the sky.
Mm-hmm. There's one that's sitting on the side of a uninhabited. Well, no, it's not uninhabited, but there's a small, what was at some point a sand or dirt strip on an island down in the Bahamas, and there's this old DC-3 that's off to the side that's just kind of sitting in the dunes. It's just wreckage at this point. But we used to fly over that plane in that little strip, and so that's another one where I was like, there's a story right there. I would love to know how this DC-3 ended up on the side of this sand strip on a barely inhabited Bahamian island.
That's some crazy shit. And that's my next question, because I'm assuming that a lot of your stuff was site support and or you're going out there to survey what's going on, because you talked about mapping up there with the icebergs. And how long did that take, by the way, before we move on? How long did it take you to map that stuff?
We would have a constant rotation of planes and crews going up there from about February through usually.
Where were you flying out of?
Sometimes July. Our unit was in North Carolina, so we'd fly North Carolina up to Canada and then base out of Canada for about 2 weeks at a time.
Newfoundland or? Yep,
St. John's, Newfoundland.
St. John's. All right. That's a wonderful place, by the way.
One of my favorite places in the whole world.
It's so beautiful there, dude.
Yeah.
Dude, Newfoundland is amazing. I back before they went commie, I really thought about moving to Canada because I just love certain Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, just gorgeous areas. People are sparse. I like that. I don't want to be around a lot of people. Just give me an internet to do my business, and I'll be happy. But I love how gorgeous it is up there, and I love being around the ocean. I'm from Virginia, and I spend a lot of time on the ocean and in the Chesapeake Bay. And you brought up Chesapeake Bay. So are you living near Virginia or what's going on?
Yeah, I live in Virginia Beach. The Chesapeake Bay is about.
I love Virginia Beach, man.
400 yards that way is the bay. So
they had a roller coaster, one of the oldest wooden roller coasters in the United States there at Virginia Beach. I got on there, man, and I'm like, this thing's fucking dangerous. You could hear it creaking underneath you, and I'm like, holy shit, this is scary. But Virginia Beach is gorgeous, great food. You get all that fresh seafood there. And that place in Colonial Beach, I don't know if you've ever been there, a lot of crabbing. And good God, just buy it. Back when I lived there, it was $25 for a bushel of crab. And you'd just be feasting on that. But I'm sure it's more expensive now to eat crab there.
Oh, yeah. It's $25 for a crab cake sandwich nowadays.
Yeah, just for the sandwich. But I love Virginia Beach, man. Spent some time there. But Virginia is a wonderful place. It's a great state. I've never gone back because the joke is the state's not big enough for me and my ex-wife. She can have it. And if God willing, something ever happens to her, I'll come back to Virginia. She moves or something else, I'd be happy to move back to Virginia because that's a gorgeous state, man. You can be on the coast and then go inland and you're in the fucking mountains.
Yeah, you get to the mountains. Yeah, same state.
Skyline Drive, man. Oh, crazy stuff. I had a crazy call there once. We went to a call with an overturned vehicle, went off the road on Skyline Drive. We got up there. And there was this one state trooper. And I'm curious if you ever had any relationships like this. This guy was the driest motherfucker I ever met in my life. And first time I met him was a motorcycle versus automobile accident. And both people were dead because the motorcyclist is doing about 55, 60 miles an hour going around a blind curve. And he's pulling out of an apartment complex. and motorcycle just drives right into T-bones him. And his head, because the window was open, took the top of the door, took his head off, the motorcyclist. And it went flying about 50 yards, rolling down the road, still in the helmet. And his body went into the car and killed the driver. Broke his neck. It was the craziest accident. And I was really new. I was the new guy. I had to do all the gross shit, and they picked me to go pick up this helmet. Said, okay, someone's got to go do it. I go bag it. I'm like, oh. So I go walking down there. I got this big medical hefty bag and my gloves on. I'm walking. And I hear these hard soled shoes walking behind me. And I just do that little peek over my shoulder. And I see the state trooper with his little smoky hat walking behind me. And he says, don't worry, buddy. I got your 6. And I'm like, I don't even know what that fucking means. I'm like, thank you. Great. 6. I'm like, oh, 6 o'clock. Okay, I get it. So I get down there and he gets up in front of me, walks faster than me, gets up in front of me, has black gloves on, reaches down and grabs that helmet, flips it, neck up. And he has it over the bag. And I open the bag and he's standing there and he doesn't drop it. And then I realize he's looking at me underneath his smoky hat. And I look up at him and he says, good thing he had his helmet on, huh? And the fucked up thing is I laughed when he did it. And I laughed. I went, and then he dropped it into the bag and I turned away. And I went back and I told one of the commanders, I'm like, who's that fucking guy? He just said the most fucked up thing to me. And I saw this guy all the time for accidents. And this overturned car, they were pancaked bottom. They fell off, rolled down and flattened the car. 4 teenagers killed. And he went down to do a report with the fire department. They're trying to cut it open, use the jaws alive, all that shit. He comes back up there. I grab his hand to help him up, pull him up. As he comes up, he does the same fucking thing to me. He goes, they all had their seatbelts on. Awesome. And just walks away from him like, I don't know what to make of this guy. Did you ever have guys like that? That dark gallows humor?
Yeah, I think everybody, because, the search and rescue business is kind of dark because you don't find everybody that you're looking for. And sometimes you do find them and it's too late. So there's a little bit of that, everybody kind of compartmentalizes things in different ways. And then it's one of the things I talk about in the book. Like we came out of a hurricane looking for a guy and we were not able we couldn't do anything to help him. And, the mood got, as soon as we got, as soon as we got out of the hurricane, everybody's mood sort of elevated. And I had, looked a little bit at stress and traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress. So I kind of made it a point because everybody's starting to sort of make jokes as we're flying home, it's been a long day. We've been in the plane for 8 or 9 hours. And so I sort of brought it back and I was like, hey guys, let's y'all need to know, we left that guy is not going to live. We couldn't do anything to help him, but we're the only ones that came out here to even try. Nobody else, some other, Canada had launched a couple planes and they kind of went out before we did, but they turned around because they saw the weather in front of them. And so I kind of told the guys, just if anything, just when you go home, if you start thinking about this, once things get quiet and you're trying to go to sleep and then you think about the gravity of the situation, just remember, we're the only ones that actually went out into this thing to try to look for somebody, to try to find this guy, but it's dark. And it's the same thing with that. Everybody has a different way of dealing with trauma. And I would imagine that a career state trooper is probably using that sort of dark humor to that's kind of a coping mechanism for the guy. And you can't fault him for it. Somebody's got to do that job. And it's an awful job to have to kind of see that stuff, but he's the one that steps up to do it. So if that's how he deals with it, then by all means, you do what you got to do to get to sleep at night.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, one of the things I found out from a veteran buddy of mine, because I've got my own version of PTSD from some of the shit that I've had to do, and it would infiltrate my dreams. And I found out the silliest thing in the world, but it works. I sleep with a headset on and I put comedies on, and it plays all night, and I don't have nightmares anymore. Those realistic, overly realistic dreams. So I highly recommend that to any vet with problems. If you have trouble sleeping, use a headset. They make them. They're little headsets that wrap around your head and go over your eyes. And I'm telling you, best sleep I get is from those fucking things. And I think that veteran every day, buddy of mine, that gave me that idea, because I've gone now since 2004 using that, and I'm telling you, it works. But we got some people that commented again here, because we're going to be wrapping up here soon. We got Snortapoopas Cuber, good friend of this channel. I love his name. He goes, hello. He's funny, but he's very knowledgeable. If I had my druthers, he said, I'd rather serve fixed wing. I rode in a couple of Army slicks in the 70s. And I'm going to tell you right now, Snort, I wholly agree. How do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was very happy in flying fixed wing. Like we talked about earlier, everyone, when you're in your 20s, especially in the Coast Guard, everybody's kind of got that type A personality, and they want to be in the thick of it. And that's a job that somebody's got to do. I just kind of knew from the beginning. I spent some time in a dry suit when I was on the ship. And I knew that in C-130s, they didn't have to wear a dry suit. The helicopter guys, when they go out and it's cold, they've got a dry suit on, boots, gloves, helmet. And
explain to those that don't know what a dry suit is.
So if the helicopter ends up in the water and it's, you're in Alaska or you're off the coast of Maine or anywhere where the water's cold, you're only going to be able to survive in the water for a real short period of time. So what a dry suit does, it has these thick gasket seals around your wrists, your ankles. Sometimes they have booties, and then around your neck, and it'll keep the water out. But the seal around your neck. That's
interesting.
It
can't be too tight.
No, it starts sawing into your neck, and it just hurts. And I wore one for a little over 24 hours. And I told I was like 23 years old. And I was like, I don't ever want to wear a dry suit again in my life because it's awful. So that was one of the things that pushed me to fixed wing. I was like, I hear like these guys are just wearing a flight suit and a headset and a pair of gloves. I was like, this later on, we got goggles. We had to start putting helmets on again, but it wasn't that bad. So that was kind of one of the things with, flying C-130s. I was like, man, I can get all over the world in this thing, spend a fair amount of time working in and out of some pretty cool countries. And I just have to wear a flight suit. You zip the front of the thing up, and you're wearing a onesie like a child would going to bed at night, and that's what you get to wear to work every day. So that was one of the selling points for C-130s. They also have a coffee maker.
I got to tell you, I would have gone the same direction. I would have done the same thing. I love C-130s. Do you have a favorite plane other than the C-130 that you've always wanted to fly?
That I've always wanted to fly. Anything. I would love to get my hands on anything that's powered with a radial engine. So there's that old sound of the engine kind of coughing when it starts, and then it's blowing smoke, and then back to, if I could pick anything, if you could give me a really polished up DC-3 and let me take that out for a spin, I think that would be a pretty cool plane to get a little bit of time in. Nothing.
By the way, you have
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to tell you have a compliment.
Oh, there we go. I appreciate that. Gap After Dark.
That's from our dear friend Gap After Dark. Good guy.
Thank you,
by the way, this is a very good friend of this channel. Used to be one of our producers. This is Zach's. They should cast this handsome chap in Masters of the Air. If they do another series, but I highly doubt they are, because what they do is they find. I have a feeling they're going to do Dale's production. Because Dale has, I was the production artist for his film, and I remember the morning I found out that I was working for Tom Hanks. It was like I had done I'd done production art, and I storyboarded the entire film. No better place to die. And I woke up that morning. It was the day before Valentine's, or as I call it, Valentine's Day Eve. And I'm sitting there, and I get this message from the skipper. He's like, Tom Hanks is coming to the picture. He's now the executive producer along with Gary Sinise. And I'm like, cool. I'm like, that's awesome, man. I work for Tom Hanks now. And, Gary Sinise too, all in one day. I'm like, I work for these two guys. That's awesome. I go through my day and I punch on Facebook and on Twitter. I'm working for Tom Hanks now. That's really cool. And I go through the day and day ends and I go to bed. And then at about 0:30, I go, oh my God, I work for Tom Hanks. And suddenly I freaked out. It took a whole fucking day for me to really realize, oh my God, I work for Tom Hanks. Yeah. I can hardly wait till I put that on my website. And no, it's nowhere on there because the movie hasn't gotten produced. It hit near to green light and then it backed off. They're still working on it. There's pitches going on with Apple. And I think that you should definitely make sure you nurture this relationship with Warriors because I'd love to see some of the stuff you do. Because it's like you said, we got one fucking Coast Guard movie with Kevin Costner. And like, oh my God, come on. Makes it. Yeah. These guys are constantly in the middle of shit, doing shit, saving people. Of course, yes, doing the recovery. It's the same thing with being a paramedic. I was a paramedic for years. And I tried nursing and I'm like, I don't like this. I became a nurse and I'm like, nope, not going to do this. And I went back and started doing paramedicine. And I got to tell you, man, I got burned out on that shit within 2.5 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
Because up there in Seattle, a lot of what we had to do was just either recovery or cleanup. And that's what gives me the nightmares. Just some of the shit that I had to look at and clean up and deal with. And I'm kind of hoping that, because you're a pilot up there, that you didn't have to get exposed to that stuff, the up close and personal.
No, do the humanitarian stuff. So sometimes we would, a lot of times when we were loading people to get them out of, flood zones or after hurricanes had hit, or you were sometimes, there was a few times where you're interacting with people who have medical conditions or they're just maybe substance abuse, or there's issues where there's a little bit of biohazard. And sometimes we'd bring a plane back if we'd been flying plane loads of people out of one place to another. You could end up with there's a little bit of biohazard in the back of the plane that you'd have to get kind of cleaned up before you could take it out again. But probably not to the extent that you would see on. And
hazmat's got to be handled. Yeah, the hazmat stuff is such a pain in the ass because it's got to be handled a specific way. And holy crap, you do not want to break, sterile fields and all that shit. Mm-hmm. But there's good. I bet the cartels use some DC-3s, a good plane for some improvised strips, because DC-3s C-47 can land on short strips. It's one of the other cool things about it. It doesn't require a long strip. 747, which you flew, you need when it's almost 3/4 of a mile long to bring it in and taxi it. It's just so much power and weight. God. So good comment, Snort. Thank you. And here's another one. I had a friend who served as a crewman in a CG helicopter. Sadly, he turned out to be a jerk, but the stories were interesting. Look, you've got cowboys, every branch, you got cowboys. That's what they are. He's referring to the cowboys. Did you have to deal with that much? Or were you a cowboy, or were you
No, well, pilots, there's so many good pilot jokes out there and most of them are warranted. So that's part of flying is there's going to be some egos. I would caveat that by saying that the majority of the people I flew with in the Coast Guard were super down to earth. So if you ran into them at Food Lion on a Sunday afternoon, you'd have no idea that, the things that they were involved in, the week before, or what they're going to get involved in the week after. For the most part, a pretty humble crowd, which made doing it for as long as I did a lot easier.
Roger that. I've got a dear friend of mine. We've been business partners in the past. He's a pilot, still currently a pilot, commercial airlines, but he was a Air Force pilot that flew sorties over Iraq. He was just a great dude. Douglas Esposito. Hey, how you doing? That's how he talks. Hey, Gary. I've never heard him say my name a normal way once. Gary. It's like, why are you emphasizing the E part at the end? It's really weird. But I love this guy. And he just one of the nicest guys I've ever met. But he talks about occasionally, he says, you get some weird motherfuckers that just complete assholes. And he says, but we have the guys we like to work with, and we tend to know how to gravitate and do that. Are you considering working in the commercial field?
Yeah, I'll keep flying on the outside. Yeah, I don't have.
What are you flying now? Are you allowed to say?
Nope, not. I'm still kind of just finished terminal leave, so just kind of getting started again on the commercial side. But I'll keep flying. I have all my certifications and stuff to fly on the outside, so we'll pick that up here pretty soon.
Is it something you think would be fun to do? Is working in the commercial field?
Yeah, I mean, flying is it's a career that it's a unique lifestyle, and that every pilot as they get older really just wants to be home. But the nature of the business is that nobody makes money flying an airplane around the airport. You got to go out and take it somewhere.
You got to go someplace.
That's the point of the airplane, But that industry gives you generally it's if you can work a week on, week off kind of schedule. For the week you're working, you're gone and you're away from home, so that can be tough. But when you're home, it's different than a corporate job where you're working, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. So the idea of having like a week off to do whatever you want is pretty appealing to me. So that's the path I'm going to go down.
Especially if you get the weekends, I get that.
Yeah.
You got a 10-year-old, so you want to spend time with your kid.
Exactly.
We got some other more great comments here. I'll start here. Great show. Good night, everybody. I got to get going. Thanks for dropping by and making some comments, Gap. Always appreciated, my friend. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and to share this video out. And please make a comment after the show ends. So it helps with the algorithm, but most of all, it also lets us know what you think about the show. And maybe you've got suggestions for some guests that I should be looking at and talking to. Absolutely. I will answer and reply to anything you guys say. Yes, I'm a famous comic book artist, world famous artist, but I'm just your down home fucking idiot friend. I say stupid shit on the internet. That's what I do. That's how I make money, saying stupid shit and doing art. And you, on the other hand, sir, you live a fucking cool life, man. A pilot. That's like James Bond shit for me. I got lucky to have been able to do the things I got to do. I worked for it, but I got drive though to do that. This is a drive thing. This isn't something you fall into. This is something you have a drive for. Yep. But there's so many times. I mean, it's just the medical stuff alone to get into flight school in the military is pretty daunting. And I watched a lot of guys get accepted and then turned around as soon as they got through the medical thing. So that just to have crossed all those crossed all the T's and dotted all the I's, and to have gotten as far as I was able to get in the military was I was super fortunate to have that opportunity. I tell people you don't have to excel in the Army. Just do your job well. Mm-hmm. That's all you got to do. And Coast Guard, same shit. Do your job well and you will excel. And I regret leaving the military because I had to raise my daughter and I didn't get to finish the military. And it's still, I dream about it. I dream about being in the military all the time. Do you still do that? Dream that you're still in it? I don't. And maybe I don't. Wow. You gotta give it time. But the last 5 years and deploying and flying through COVID and just I was really tired when I was finally able to retire. And I'm at a point now where I really appreciate all the opportunities I had, and I think I got to do some really cool stuff. But I'm also really happy to be done with it, because it feels really nice to wake up in the morning and not have to worry that I'm going to get called in, to pick up duty again that day. And that was a constant kind of
that was the reality of the Coast Guard, was that you'd work a 24-hour shift, or you'd work through the weekend, you'd get home, you'd finally think you got a day to yourself, and then the phone rings and they're like, hey, we got another one, we need you to come back in and backfill the crew that's about to come back, and you know, they're bagged out, we need another crew to turn around and head back out. That was kind of a never-ending thing. So I left feeling very happy but also tired, and where I'm at right now, I don't want to go back and do it again. That may change with time, but for now I'm just,
and that maybe
kind of
is
really
why
happy.
you don't dream about it, because I cut mine off early because of my kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in my head I have those subconscious regrets, and I miss the military, I miss the camaraderie, I miss the fuck around. God damn, we fucked around a lot. And I will dream, and I swear to God, I'm 60 years old, my friend. Okay, 60, and I still dream while I'm in a barracks putting on my boots, and we got to go on a forced march somewhere. And I'm like, I'm too old for this shit. But in my dream, I'm like in my 20s or 30s, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I can go hump a little. Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, Brian, Kid Brian meets you now.
Well, that's the next one. Because did you build model kits? Did you build model kits?
No.
Your kid, if Kid Brian met you today, what would his reaction be?
I like this question.
So, all right. I mean, there's a good way to put it. When I was 17 years old, maybe 18, and I got accepted into the Coast Guard Academy by some strange twist of fate, I thought, if I do this, if I can do 20 years and walk out the door at 20 years, for the rest of my life, I could go work at a surf shop and sell surfboards for the rest of my life, but nobody can ever tell me that I didn't do anything with my life. And I'm not going to go work at a surf shop. I'll keep flying. I'm sure of it. But I think 17-year-old me would be very happy to see that 43-year-old me still has a garage full of surfboards, has a 10-year-old kid that still thinks it's cool to hang out with dad, and I can walk across the street to the beach and take my dog for a walk. Like, I'm pretty happy dude.
Was the family pretty supportive of your career?
Oh yeah. My dad was a pilot in the Navy, so he was
good.
Super supportive. They've been super supportive.
It's in the blood.
The whole time. Yeah.
It's in the blood.
And that's what I mean. And that's
awesome.
The book. The book exists because my mom saved all my emails that I sent over the 4 years that I was at the academy. So, and then of course, she prints them all out and says, here you go. This is everything you sent to us. And, I'm reading this stuff, and they were what I put them through with all my emails home complaining about everything. I owe them quite a bit, but that's what gave me the material to write this book. That's
outstanding, dude. Well, I hope we get to talk again. I'm really enjoying meeting you. You're a really cool dude. And I love supporting my friends from the military. And I'm going to tell you, man, Julia loves you. She loves your writing. She really does.
She's great.
She's very fond of working with you. And
glad to hear that.
Yeah, she's look, man, she's one of my best friends. I said that the other day, that I work for Captain Dale Dye, but his wife is one of my best friends. I talk to her all the time, and sometimes we're just talking about our aches and pains. Man, getting 55 sucks. Man, 58 blows, because we're close to the same age. I think we're within a year of each other in age.
Yeah, that's when you when you start going to parties with your friends, and all you're talking about is like who's had knee surgery.
Right, exactly. And in fact, Skipper was on. I had him on for Starship Troopers on Monday, and I cracked the joke on there because he met my girlfriend Anima, who you met too before the show started. I said, "Hey, Skipper, you're not the other one that robbed the cradle." Well, that's right. My woman is exactly the same age difference. So hot.
Good for you.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. She gets irritated with me because I'm a dick. But I don't know, man. It was really a pleasure having you on here, dude. Yeah, and when you get your next book or whatever the fuck you're doing, by the way, do you have a schedule for any of the shows you're going to be doing where you're going to be traveling, signing books?
No, I don't have anything just yet because I'm trying to figure out. I'll probably do some local stuff here, and then I'll see. I mean, a pipe dream has been to get down to Key West, because the first novel started out in Key West. So that's
Yep.
I think there's a few
Plus, it's awesome
bookstores
down there. I love it.
Yeah, and it's a fun town. I'd really love to get down there and do something. I just haven't had the time or the bandwidth to put that together just yet.
Well, I will tell you one thing in particular. Because I will do book signings at military bases,
Okay.
and you can actually work with their people and get that set up. It's usually where they also have their chow, and you end up in there and they're eating and they're coming over talking to you about the book. And that was the most fun I have ever had in my life for book signings. Is I love being around grunts, man. I just love it. I just sit there because I can talk the shit, and so I just feel right at home around these guys. Even though I'm an old dude, I'm like, fuck, man, I love grunts. But I will tell you, try that. Any of the Coast Guard places, get book signings near them, because I guarantee you're going to get a lot of Coast Guard guys wanting to get the book and talk to you.
Yeah.
So, but again, proud to finally, I'm proud I work with you. Great books. I love your writing. Keep it up. I'm sorry to hear that you're done with Cole. I was kind of hoping we'd hear some news that you might do another one.
We'll see. Yeah. Time will tell.
But man, good stuff, man. Keep it up, and I hope I get to talk to you again.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
And before we go, we got these things. Zach's. Oh yeah, here it is. He says he'd make a good Lannister because you're handsome and you got the hair, perfect hair. So he's trying to say you make a good Lannister. But then he says, not in the weird way.
Not in the weird way. It's perfect. Yeah. Yep.
I drink.
That works.
And I know things. So everybody that was here, let me thank everybody in the chat. We got a lot of people that dropped in to say hi. We got, let's see, Snorty, of course, Snortopus. Josh Coe, who is free. I always love that. He drops in and says, I'm free. And John the Beagle Dad, great questions. Gap After Dark, great questions. Zach's always fun. I love that guy. One of my closest, dearest friends. And we just got like a great chat. And it looks like some people dropped in last minute. I see Kenneth Vitato? What the fuck? How do you pronounce that? Martin, help me. You're Venezuelan. You know foreign words. Come on, help me. Chinatsky.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce that?
No.
Vitato. Your tits up useless, my friend. I tell you. Kenneth Vitato. I am a 70, a DAV. Tell me about it. Amen, brother. I find the DAV very helpful organization. If you're a veteran, need some help, turn to the DAV. They will support you. They work with guys for PTSD, for housing. They are there, and they're wonderful. Also clothing, too. Like if you're having tough times because we're in a shitty economy, DAV will help you. Vinkman's Girl is here. God, they're all dropping in last minute. You're always late, Vinkman's Girl. You always show up at the end of the show. You know what? I'm just going to end the show in spite of you for showing up this late. Brian, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it. And Martin, thanks for producing the show. Shinatsky, thanks for being a guest panelist. Great question. I think you only asked one the whole show.
Oh, I asked three.
Okay, you got 3 good questions, my friend. And Brian, keep it up. And I hope you venture into other areas with your writing, because I like creative minds. And you're really good at putting, because so often guys that serve in the military end up writing like they're doing a sit rep. You do not.
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
You actually tell
I'm
the
no
story.
good at that. Yeah.
Sit reps suck, man.
Yeah,
I'm better at the narrative and dialogue.
Yep.
I just love that shit. So God bless you, my friend. Don't leave. We were going to play the outro credits, and then we'll talk to you for a couple of minutes for the after the show ends. Everybody have a wonderful Wednesday. It's hump day, man. Get out there, get humping. Hump anything. Hump everything. Or not, because you might get arrested.
Hump yourselves, everybody.
Hump yourselves. Hey, guys. God bless, and we'll see you later next time.
Y'all come back.